Hello, welcome to another edition of Prove All Things. I want to thank everyone for joining us, whether you're watching today on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, on the CGI Digital Network website, or on our CGI Digital Network app or television station app that you can find on Roku or Apple TV. We thank you for joining us, and I'm joined with co-host Mike James today. How you doing, Mike?
Greetings, Jeff. Good to see you again. We're going through a heat wave out west here. We've got about 106-degree highs for the last week, and we got a few more days of that to go.
So you're above I guess the in the 80s now. You're a little bit extreme.
Yeah, right. Yeah, these are the most extreme temperatures we've had since I came out here. A week and about 105 is the high.
Hmm. That is wild. Yeah,
Yeah,
we just had just.
few wildfires are starting to rage. It's wildfire season has gotten going out here. The
Mhm.
winds start to pick up in September, October, and we got a fire at Big Bear Mountain. That's about a 45 minutes an hour from me, and there's a big one up north too.
Okay, all right, wonderful. So, are you have you have your plans to buy your electric car since you're out there in California?
Yeah, I think 2035 is the plan. I don't know if that's gonna make it, Jeff, but that's what they're
Yeah.
saying out here. Yeah,
All right. Well, we'll see how that goes. That's really ambitious to change the entire structure of of how you do things. So, definitely interested to see how that goes. All
yeah,
right.
they're
Well.
they're already telling us we got to get rid of the lawnmowers in about a year, the gas lawnmowers.
So, you use like the lawnmowers where you plug them in and stuff, or
Yeah,
the
that's what
battery
they want
operated.
you to get. I bought a gas one last year, and then I didn't know that they were changing things out here. So.
Yeah, I used to have one that was electric powered, and it was the worst thing in my life trying to cut grass with it because it was just
I've
because it
had
just didn't have enough
electric
power.
before.
It just
Yeah,
didn't have enough power
yeah, I've
for where I
had
was
that.
at. All right, well, it's good to see you today. Any news or announcements or anything going on?
Yeah, we've got our Bible study this Friday, our twice monthly Bible study. I'll be
Hmm.
continuing my study on the law of God. If anyone is interested in that,
Hmm.
I can send you a link. It'll begin Friday evening at 8:30 p.m. We go about an hour and a half with those studies. And Cecil will be doing one later this month. And next Sabbath, we have our monthly cell group meeting. I do one in the morning, one in the afternoon with people throughout the country. So if anybody's interested, if you don't have a regular group to meet with, send me an email and I can get you linked up to that meeting also.
All right, that's great. And if you're out there on Facebook, please give us your comments, or on YouTube, send us your comments, or on Twitter. We look forward to everyone's comments and joining us today. So, I'll let you introduce today's guest, since you probably know him better than anybody. So, go ahead and
Okay.
introduce who we got today.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So my brother George is with us today, and I grew up with George. Of course, he's a bit younger than me, but you can see some of the resemblance there. And
Mhm.
George is going to talk mainly about exercise today and connect it to the Bible, also the body and how it works. We're going to get into various things like that. George has a lot of background in this subject, and I'm going to let him do an introduction of himself for the audience since he's a new guest. So, George, just give us some biographical information on yourself. Also, get into your specialty, why you can talk about this subject, your background in it. But first, start with the bio info, where you're from, where you live, wife, dogs, and also your church group out there in Maryland.
Good afternoon, everyone. George James, and thanks, Mike and Jeff. Pleasure to be on with both of you. So a little bit about me, Silver Spring, Maryland area, here with my wife Carol and two dogs. My mom is with us now too, and my mom has been with all the brothers. She's taking turns here. So I've been involved with the Church of God for a good while. Mike was a big influence with me in that road, and my mom and grandfather were too. I'd say my dad too, to some extent, actually. But as far as God's truth, trying to attain that, Mike probably had the most significant influence. But Mike and a friend baptized me some time ago in my college days, a little over 20 years ago now. So I'm getting up there as well. And so I am I primarily worship with CGI Gaithersburg. We are a small group that has gotten smaller since the pandemic, but we do have folks coming in virtually. So we have a virtual number coming in too. So we're doing maybe 3 or 4 Sabbaths out of the month. One of them is just a virtual one now, a Bible study primarily. So that's in the Gaithersburg, Maryland area. So it's about maybe a half-hour drive from where I am here. As far as today, my wife is Carol. Dogs are Gabriel and Maggie. So, and Mike knows about one of the dogs very well too. So, but as far as today, the subject, Mike touched on the body and so forth. I would categorize. I would just add this to that. Yes, we want to talk about the body. We want to talk about health in general. We're going to look at the mind, the brain a little bit. Nothing too deep, but we'll also look at the body and exercise related things. And we're going to look at some scriptures. We're going to make some connections with the Bible, and we want to make some connections with maybe some lessons of history too. I've kind of typed up like a brief outline. I'm going to kind of pinpoint some certain items that may be helpful in this process. I know Jeff and Mike will do some questions as your process is for the program. And I have a exercise science background, Slippery Rock University. That was early 2000s. And I've also attained some additional certifications that I found very helpful. They're in the area of nutrition, they're in the area of therapy and coaching, and especially in also exercise, corrective exercise, so some therapeutic things as well, some coaching, kettlebells, things of that nature. So the whole gamut pretty much of physical training. But one thing that I found particularly interesting, I was doing a course maybe a couple years out of college, around 2004 or something, and the course basically delved into nutrition. It was a special performance nutrition course, and I've attained the credentials for that. But what I learned here was this area is incredibly vast. There's so much to it. There's so much to learn. And it can alter people's lives for better or worse for a variety of reasons. It's very complex, much more complex than what we give it credit for, much more complex than just putting things in our bodies and expecting us to function at the most optimal levels. There's a lot to consider, and we'll try to consider a few interesting things here today that hopefully will be helpful for everyone.
Okay, George, thanks for that introduction. And I'm going to let Jeff's our main moderator, so I'm going to let him take the lead here and get things rolling on the subject.
Yeah, it's good to have you joining us today, George. I remember meeting both of you at the Feast of Tabernacles back in Panama City, maybe 25 years ago, or it's really a long time ago.
Something like that. It really has.
Yeah, and the first time I saw George, he was on the dance floor. We have like a family dance, and George had this big curly. You had big curly hair back then, right? Big black curly hair.
That's right. That's right.
He was just hopping around like just by yourself, just out there, just hopping. I was like, who is this guy? Just going crazy, hopping around. And I found out it was Mike's brother. So that's my first memory of George. Is this very energetic guy, a guy who I guess your whole life you've been studying nutrition and been living nutrition and health and exercise.
I would say so, Jeff. And also I must add, yes, Jeff, when you first knew me, my hair was in the prime of its career then. Hopefully some of me is still in the prime of my career.
Yeah, yeah,
Same with the hair.
yeah. You look so much like your brother now. It's amazing. You just need to put the glasses on, and we'd be
I
like,
know,
who's
I know.
who here? So on on this connection you were going to look at today of you said the mind and the body. So you have some spiritual things in the Bible you want to link
Yes.
about this? Okay.
Yes, Jeff, I'd like to do that as well and make some connections. I want to also maybe give a little bit of a brief history lesson too on psychiatry a little bit as well. So that'll come up just a little bit later, but
Mm-hmm.
I do have an opening verse or two verses to start with whenever you would like me to go there. I'm going to probably start for the King James Version or however you want to do this.
Hey, that sounds great. Let me know, and I'll see if I can look it up and put it on the screen.
Okay. I tell you what, so I would just add this too. Earlier in the year, our elder over here, we have Deacon Tom Bettinger. We also have Mike Reese, who is the elder with the CGI group. And Mike Reese has been asking people to speak and to come up with some interesting subjects. We've been doing church doctrine as well as a main study or a main message theme throughout, and that's going really, really well. And one day earlier in the year, I gave a presentation. I shared a little bit on something I call the golden nugget verses. So what I want to start with, Jeff and Mike, is a couple of those golden nugget verses. And what I want to, and this is going to be in Isaiah chapter 7, verses 14 and 15. The main point I want to bring out here is just make a connection with what we put in our bodies and human behavior. We can go deep into Isaiah 7, 14, 15. We may open up a whole other can of worms in a sense. I want to try to stay on track if we can, but this can lead to great discussion, a lot of fascinating discussion for sure. And I'm just trying to just pinpoint certain items right now. So I'm going to go to King James, and this is Isaiah 7, verses 14 and 15. And we want to make connection. We want to connect the dots here. So verse 14 here first. Okay, Jeff, beautiful. Therefore, the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Notice verse 15 here, quite interesting. Butter and honey shall he eat. So they're eating something.
Mm-hmm.
That he may know to refuse evil and choose the good. I just want to bring out this point right at the get-go. Verse 15, there's a relationship here. What we put into our bodies and our behavior. Knowing good, knowing evil. Simple as that right now. That's how we're going to start. So I think what we should do is this. Let's ask this question. Does God care? Does God care about what we put into our bodies? We're not perfect. We try to find what's right for ourselves individually. I'll mention a little bit more on that a little bit later and have some sources to share with everyone too. So let's take a look at something here. And let's consider this too. What are these verses and is there any significance? So Daniel chapter 1. Remember Daniel 1? And I think it's verses maybe 6 through 20, verse 8 through 20, something like that. Daniel and his companions are taken captive by the Babylonians. And the chef or the kitchen attendant for the king says, Daniel, here is the menu. Here is what you're going to eat. So there's all these delicacies, all these fine foods and wine. And Daniel says, no, thank you. He says, I'm going to eat something simpler. I'm going to focus on vegetables and water primarily. Maybe there was something else in there too. Now, the king's attendant says, Daniel, please don't do this to me. You're going to get me killed. Daniel says, focus on this. You see me 10, 12 days later, I will be healthier than anyone else. You give me the simple diet, and lo and behold, he agrees. He checks on Daniel. He notices Daniel, his eyes are vibrant. The life force is there. His constitution of his physical body is looking sharp. He's looking good. He looks healthier than nearly anyone else. And maybe his fellow companions also, maybe there's a few of them that also participated along with Daniel in this. So Why is this in the Bible? Why? What is this here for? What's the meaning of this? What's the big deal here? Well, it's there, right? And this is the inspired word of God, is it not? Mm-hmm. God has it there, so we pick up certain things. Golden nuggets, diamonds in the rough. What can we find out about these diamonds in the rough, so to speak, of these Bible verses? This is not a nutrition book, but it is a book about life, about spirituality. But does he care about our physical bodies? Does he care? I think we know the answer to that. Let's go a little further, guys. Let's take a look at this. Remember Leviticus 11. Of course, Church of God movement, CGI, ICG, Philadelphia, Restored, Living, Church of God, United Church of God. Church of God movements, Sabbatarian groups know about Leviticus 11. Mosaic dietary laws. There we have what to eat, what not to eat. Does God care about what we're putting in our bodies? So we have a big list there, and all of us know this. And oftentimes we think, well, I'm doing this Mosaic dietary law. I'm fine. And maybe we are. But think about Daniel's example, though. Mm-hmm. Think about Daniel's example where he was, and there we have Leviticus 11 right there. That's awesome. Was Daniel just focusing on clean and unclean meats? I don't think so. I think he wanted his digestive system to be simple and easy and pure, and just function as best as it optimally could for his tissues to be able to be energized and to be at their best.
George, just yes. Breaking in there, George, a question. Yes. You read a lot today about intermittent fasting. It's become a fad today. And of course, we could get into the Bible and talk about fasting, but intermittent fasting, what are your thoughts on that? And how could that relate a little bit to what Daniel was talking about simplifying the diet, making it easier for the body?
Okay. Great question. Intermittent fasting, I am all for it. There is good scientific data to support it. There is a doctor down in Florida. I believe he's actually has a Christian paradigm, a Christian worldview, maybe not Sabbatarian. His name is Don Colbert from state of Florida. He, in one of his books, he's written several interesting books. He does talk about intermittent fasting because of its detoxifying effects for the body, helping the body to eliminate toxins. Intermittent fasting, he would say, is a great way to go about that. So it could be a fast for a portion of a day. What Don Colbert may recommend, though, is try to emphasize fruits and vegetables only, at least for a time, because the enzymes of fruits and veggies will help us to maintain muscle mass. We won't, if we're just doing a full fast, we may lose muscle mass in the process. However, when we fast 24 hours with nothing at all, there still is a benefit from that, from the point just given as far as detoxification, but also because of the fact of we are allowing the body to heal, because digestion requires great energy for the body. And if we're just eating a lot, the body's using up a lot of energy for digestion. If we give the body a break, the body can use other energies for healing of various wounds or injuries or illnesses. So sometimes from that standpoint, it's also good too to have nothing at all for a brief period of time. And we're just commanded to fast 1 day a week, or 1 day a year. I'm sorry, 1 day a year, Day of Atonement. But we can also fast, more often, and it may be helpful not just for spiritual benefits, but for physical benefits too.
Okay, let me for people out there who don't understand what intermittent fasting is. Can you give us just a definition of what intermittent fasting is? Exactly how? Like if you're going to do that, what would you do to do that?
Okay, what I may do, Jeff, is I may skip meals, but I could also do it. I could also do that. There's several variations that could be done. Meal skipping is one of them. So fasting a portion of the day is one example. Another example would be if I were to fast a complete fast, maybe once a month or once a week with nothing at all. Or another example would be this. I could have maybe 5 days on, 2 days of fasting with only fruits and vegetables, or vice versa. So it's a short period of time, altering the dietary plan and approach, making it simpler for either healing or helping digestive system for elimination purposes as well. Maybe more water, maybe an emphasis also towards certain foods like fruits and vegetables and water rather than a lot of the heavier things. And this can be done daily for a week. This can be done for 2 days on, 5 days off, or 5 days on, 2 days off. So maybe those would be some examples. So there is some variety as far as intermittent fasting goes. And that's what I've studied and have read on it, at least. It's not just a one size fits all necessarily. There was one nutritionist, I believe she's out in California, Ann Louise Gittleman is her name. And one thing that she would say is this, and this is along the same lines. She does an elimination approach where she takes out certain foods from the diet completely for maybe 3 months. 3 months, that's 90 days, a long time, a good portion of the year. Then you take note of how the body feels. And then gradually you start putting things back in. But you want to notice some good results, hopefully, from that. Are you feeling better? Are you more energetic? Are you able to digest and eliminate appropriately? So, and also the detoxifying component too. So that could be something too, where you take out certain things for maybe 3 months. After the 3 months, you put something back in, see how the body responds. Is there a better response or a negative response? If it's negative, you take it out completely then, because that food item or whatever it is not right for you as a unique individual. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
Thanks,
All
George.
right, yeah, thank you.
So please pick it up where I asked you.
Absolutely, sure. Yeah, this we can get very deep here for sure. This is an interesting topic. Here's what I want to share too, guys. I want to go through some more scriptures, and Luke 11 and 12. So Luke 11, 12. I'm not sure if Jeff wants to put it up, or I have Bible to my left here too.
Looking for it here.
Sure. And I am there, Jeff, right now. I could start reading. You can feel free to get up there.
Go ahead.
So this is King James again. So 11 and 12. If a son shall ask bread of any of you that is a father, will we give him a stone? Or if he ask a fish, will he for a fish give him a serpent? Or if he shall ask an egg, will we offer him a scorpion? And then verse 13 goes, if you then being evil know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more shall your Father in heaven give the Holy Spirit to them that ask him? Let's hone in on this. Notice what it says here, good gifts. We might gloss over this and be like, yeah, we just read this. Of course, we're not going to give someone a scorpion to eat or a snake or a serpent, for goodness sakes.
Mm-hmm.
But notice the fish in an egg. What's interesting about those food items that we can eat? I delve into it a little more deeply in that sense, and maybe we all do to some extent. Take a look. So consider fish, for example. What do we know about fish? There's a lot of research on this, and it's probably one of the most researched items in nutrition. Omega-3 fatty acids, sardines, salmon, mackerel, cod, trout, tuna to some extent. All of these things, and other fish items, other fish too, but maybe those ones are probably the highest content of omega-3, have omega-3. What's the significance there? Our brain is about 50% fat and cholesterol. The omega-3 fatty acid supports the brain health. We always hear about brain, heart, skin, reduction in inflammation of the body. That's what omega-3 does. So it's good it's a good protein source. Protein's important for the body. The omega-3 fatty acid really revitalizes and helps recharge the body mentally from a cardiovascular standpoint, the skin, the reducing inflammation in the body. So that's a good thing. Let's take a look at the egg. What do we know about eggs? Eggs have maybe the most complete amino acid profile of any food in existence. When scientists measure the amino acid profile of various foods, they use eggs as the measuring tool. The greatest amino acid utilization of any food is mother's breast milk. Most of us aren't babies. Eggs, however, are number 2. So eggs have the second best amino acid profile. So they have the best building block capacity of any protein food we can eat. Maybe not the highest protein content, but the best capacity because of the amino acid profile being more complete. And that's the building block building blocks for helping to rebuild the body. So that,
George,
again, yes, Mike.
on the egg, again, years ago, you would hear things about eggs that, oh, eggs are high in cholesterol. Maybe you shouldn't eat eggs. But I know that attitude has changed, is
Yes.
what I've read over the years. But why did that change? And can you tell us a little bit about why there was this thought about eggs in the past?
Mike, that's a great question. Very deep answer. Let me try to I'll do my best with this. Okay. So here's the one thing. You are absolutely correct. The tide has turned again. I say again because many years ago, early 20th century, we were a society that definitely were like, we got to have our eggs. Eggs are good for us. Let's do this. Let me share what's good about eggs, and then I'll continue on. So with eggs, keep in mind the protein. Keep in mind the B12 vitamin. B12 is significant for the central nervous system. What does B12 do? It helps us maintain composure mentally. It helps keep us composed a little bit, keep us together. We're not as jittery or nervous. Very important. Additionally, eggs have omega-3. Now, let's also, Mike, consider your point about the cholesterol. You're absolutely right. But here's something we need to know. And I want to tell you a fun story with a professor that I had some years ago, too. So the cholesterol is true. Eggs have cholesterol. But let's think about what cholesterol is. It's a lipid or a fat, in essence. It supports brain health, too. So that's one reason, Mike, why the tide has turned again, because we've rethought things about eggs. We rethought, and we've considered that we do need some fat. To have no fat in the diet means we're not going to be as healthy. We've got to have all three macronutrients. So that's one thing that has kind of resurfaced. All three macronutrients are necessary: protein, fat, carbohydrate. Now, I had a professor, this is interesting. I had a professor in school, and it was a nutrition class, and we were talking about eggs. And he said, eggs have cholesterol, and people are worried about that, and there might be cause for concern for some people. However, eggs also have a lipid called lecithin. And what lecithin does, when we eat an egg or eggs, it helps the body metabolize and break down the cholesterol so the body is able to use it to its best and most optimal levels. Cholesterol is also a foundation for testosterone, a key hormone in the body. Men and women both have testosterone at various levels, more for the men, of course, which makes a man and a woman. So that's very significant to recognize. Now, the one thing is, though, too, with cholesterol is, let's say we're someone that we come home from work and we don't do very much. We read the paper and we never exercise. Should someone like that be eating a lot of eggs on a consistent basis? No, they shouldn't. Because the body, when we take in fuel, the body has to use that fuel. Therefore, someone like that should have at least smaller portion sizes, minimize their eggs, but realize this too, the egg yolk, this is important to mention too, the egg yolk has an amino acid methionine. The methionine is key to help create an anabolic body. So if we just eat egg whites only because we're afraid of cholesterol, we lose out on rebuilding the physical temple here. Methionine is key, and it's only in the yolk. So I think, Mike, what has happened is, through the years also to help answer your question a little bit more, we've gotten this kick that fat is bad, that fat is causing us to get unhealthy, that if we eat fat, we're in trouble. But we must recognize God's creation, first of all. Remember the lipid that helps metabolize the cholesterol, and cholesterol does have health components that are important for our bodies as well. So it's almost like we've gone full circle as a society. Another point to bring out this thing is when in the early, I think it was sometime in the 1990s, our federal government, they said that they gave us the food guide pyramid, and carbohydrates were numero uno. They were number one, and carbs are not bad. Carbs have their place as a great fuel source. But we were focused so much on carbs, we were minimizing fat, and we were going easy, middle of the road on protein. That was the guide of the food guide pyramid. So what happened? What was the result of this? 10, 15 years later, Mike, we became a more obese, and Mike and Jeff, we became a more obese population. We didn't lose weight. We got fatter. We cut down fat in the diet and got fatter. And this has been documented in various sources. So we got to realize that too. Fat helps insulation. Also, we are this human organism which requires a variety of nutrients and chemical processes. All macronutrients are needed. Some people would see fat on a label. We're like, oh my gosh, it's like the demon is after me now. I can't have this. But by having less fat or no fat, we got fatter as a society, partly because we're going so hard on the carbohydrates. Too much sugar in the diet. Too much sugar, same lifestyle where we're not as physical. You got to burn the fuel. Got to use those calories as well in optimal ways. Otherwise, it becomes adipose tissue. We got fatter from more carbohydrates and thinking, oh, we're going to minimize fat. This is the culprit. But something else too, though. Go ahead. A question or comment?
Yeah. Well, I remember it was, I guess, the late '80s, early '90s.
Yeah.
You would go to like a restaurant, and they would have the low fat meals. I think Taco Bell had an entire low fat menu where they had low fat sour cream and low fat this, and it was like complete low fat tacos. They sold low fat cookies in the stores. They were full of sugar, but it was low fat. And this was something that I remember it was just all over. Like what they were selling people was all this low fat. And then maybe 10 years later, it was like the Atkins, where it's like, all right, don't get rid of the fat. Now we're completely getting rid of sugar. And so all the items started being no sugar, no sugar, no sugar, and all this protein and stuff like that.
That's exactly right. Yeah. That's exactly right, Jeff.
So I don't know I don't know where we're at now as far as like what they're pushing as far as which way they eat, but it seems like there's always that trend where all of a sudden all the restaurants, all the places where you can get food, they all pick up onto that. So when you mention that, and again, speaking of the fats that we know are healthy, what do you think about what should we think about these trends that we see that pop up?
Jeff, that's an awesome question. Here's what I'm going to do. Because you asked that question, I'm going to try to, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to something I was going to talk about a little bit later, but that's perfect. This is perfectly fine. This is the part of the beauty of dialogue and discussion. So let's consider Jeff's question here. I have some great resources here. So Jeff, you mentioned about various trends. There was another man, and he's still living, I believe. This book here came out in, I think, the early part of the latter part of the 1990s or 1980s, I believe. Now, it's probably one of the most thorough books I've ever come across. It helped me tremendously when I was doing my course with the International Sports Science Association a number of years ago. So the doctor of this book, his name is Dr. William Walcott. He brings up some interesting points. And it relates well to your question, Jeff. One thing he talks about is this: consider the individual. There's not a one-size-fits-all of anything. Don't follow trends, follow your body. He has a chart in here, and what this chart highlights is how foods affect you. For example, an hour later after a meal, how do you feel? Are you energized and uplifted? Are you depressed? Are you somewhere in the middle? If you're depressed, if you're not energized, something needs to change in what you're putting into your body. So, and that could mean a change in carbohydrate protein ratio. It could be something as simple as that. It could be more healthy fats, like the omega-3, omega-6 to some extent, but omega-3, the omega-6 by itself can be detrimental. Omega-3 must balance out the omega-6 or must balance with it. So, and usually we're missing omega-3. That's why I promote that a little bit more. So Dr. Walcott would say, hey, don't follow trends. You know what he says also, Jeff and Mike? Atkins is okay. Pritikin, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Pritikin, but Pritikin is deceased now, but he was also a nutrition guru. Pritikin had the idea that you got to go big on the carbs and low on the fats. Atkins, as we know, big on protein and fats, little on the carbs. What does Walcott say? Walcott says, don't listen to either one of them 100%. Listen to both of them a little bit, but listen to your body first, because your body has in it innate wisdom built into it, and it will tell you what's going on if you listen to it. Another thing, Jeff, I want to bring up, there's another man, somewhat of a contemporary of George Watson, and his name was Roger Williams. Roger Williams, this isn't so much a nutrition book, but it delves into metabolism, alcohol use and maybe abuse of alcohol, how some alcohol is just too much for some and not very much for someone else, for instance. This is biochemical individuality. Roger Williams says, respect individual differences. Don't follow trends. Again, similar principle to Walcott. What is your body telling you? We're all different. We don't metabolize the same way. We don't create energy the same way from the foods that we take in. We must respect that. Of course, exercise can alter this too. Exercise helps metabolic rate. That's why it's good for all of us to do something. We don't have to be an elite athlete necessarily, but it's good to move. Take a walk with the dog. That's great. That's a beautiful thing. So maybe this helps a little bit with your question, Jeff.
Well, that brings up another question, though. Okay.
Yes.
Because we're all created in the image of God. God created mankind,
Yes.
male and female. So why is it that we are that different? That for someone, the food, we have that wide variety in what we can eat and can't eat. Why do you think that we are that different with food? Why aren't we all the same?
That's a great question. First of all, I would start with this. Different genes. Genetically, we're different. We are from different parts of the world with different genes. So God made us in his image, and he made us in such a way that, I think that it's natural that, all the colors we see around us of human beings, that's God's creation. God did that. And that's part of his beautiful design. And that should be respected. I think also what needs to be respected is, how do I respond compared to someone else? Let me give you an example. This is a personal example. So as you know, Jeff, Mike and I think you know this. Mike and I have some Greek ancestry. We're not all Greek, but we're probably over 50% Greek in our ancestry, I believe. I did the DNA test, and I was a little over 50% Greek. If we go over to Greece, Jeff, we'll find something very interesting. About 80% of the population is lactose intolerant, meaning, and you probably know this already, there's problems with digesting dairy, with cheese and milk from a cow. Now, as a kid, I struggled with this in my early teen years. I refrained from dairy, and my health changed. I was a sickly child in grade school for a period of time, and also in junior high a little bit as well. My dad and I, we would go to different places. We did some tests. Does this kid have an ulcer? I was doing various tests and things. I was having trouble in this regard from just an immune system standpoint. Here's the thing. From my knowledge, and Mike can answer this maybe a little more thoroughly, Mike, the oldest, Nick, number 2, I'm number 3, Chris, number 4, my 3 other brothers didn't suffer the way I did. We're all Greek ancestry, and we find that in Greece, we have that intolerance. I seem to inherit a genetic component where I didn't have the enzyme necessary to break down the milk sugar. Mike, Nick, and Chris seem to be okay with this. I was not. So there's a genetic factor. Now, it's a great question, Jeff. And it goes deeper than what I just answered.
Yeah.
But we're all different. I think there's a spiritual side to this. But God made us, but He made us also to knock on the door, seek and you shall find. So I'm in charge. George A. James is in charge of this organism. I only get one. There's not 2 of me walking around. There's just one of me. I better do my best job to take care of it because God gave this to me. Jesus Christ died for this physical organism, and yours and Mike's as well, and everyone else listening to us. So hopefully,
that's helpful. I guess the way God creates us, that we have different strengths and weaknesses as far as like sin is involved. Some people are maybe more, addictive or more this or that. People, so we all have to overcome. I guess we all have to figure out who we are who God wants us to be, and be the best that we can be. And when we figure it out.
You're hitting on something there, Jeff, that's very interesting, because this physical spiritual connection is always there. And I was just thinking of 1 Corinthians 12, verse 27, where it talks about the body as an analogy of the church as an organism, where everybody has these different roles within the body of the church, variations of what we should be doing. And it's true physically also, that these things play out also. You know, George was getting into the variety of skin tone and color, and God made us so all these different hues could come out as we got together and had children and married and things of that nature. So it's very interesting. Yeah, very, very interesting, George. We're getting into some great questions, taking you off course, but we'll bring you back in the future for this. But I'm really impressed by the depth that you have with your answers to us. So why don't you pick it back up wherever we left off there, George? We'll continue.
I'll tell you what I'll do. Here's the thing. I will pick it up, but Jeff, you led me to kind of something else too. And Mike, let's do this, and I'll pick it up again. Here's how I feel about this too. I want to go to Matthew 7 for a moment, and Mike mentioned some great verses there about the diversity of the body itself, spiritually and physically. Matthew 7 says this, and this is how I like to think of this too. So I like to think, no excuses. We're responsible. I'm accountable. You're accountable. We have questions. We have answers. We have concerns. What does the living God tell us to do? Matthew 7:7, ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and you shall find, and it shall be opened unto you. Verse 8, for everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. So it's like, knock on the door. We have answers. We have questions. Go to God. God will reveal things to us. He will help us with our health. Mentally, physically, God will help us how we should eat to optimize our life here on this planet. So we knock on the door. This can pertain to anything, any facet of our lives. Knock on the door. Seek and you shall find. We have faith in this. So I can apply this also to our physical health, mentally, physically. So I just wanted to share that too.
Yeah. You know what? And just thinking about all this and what you're mentioning about, and what Mike mentioned is that, God created us all to be different and diverse, and that's for a reason, right? Because if we all had the same genetics, think about it, if we all, y'all have closer genetics, but you're still not the same, right? Because you're lactose intolerant, and he's not. But what if you were exactly the same? And everybody looked exactly the same because we all had the exact same genetics all across the world. We had the exact same, tendencies. And that would not be what God wants. God wants diversity and all this difference in His creation, in His family. And I think that's the reason why He created genetics the way He did, is so that we would have this great, and we do have it, this great diversity among people and among thinking and things like that. So,
and within that diversity, that is how you learn love better. Because if everybody was the same, what would you know? How would you understand what hate is, what evil is? You get what I'm saying here? So again, we're getting into the spiritual side of this a little bit. But I hear what you're saying there, both of you. Yeah.
All right, so I'll let Jeffers get back to his back to track there, but I just want to draw that in.
Okay, gentlemen, I'll tell you what. One thing I wanted to also is let me break into it this way. What I want to do at this point, I want to consider psychiatry. I want to consider a brief synopsis of some of the supposedly great psychiatric minds of the past, and give just a little brief summary of some of the ideas, thoughts that they had and how they would counsel or how they would talk to their people. Where would they build the crux of their arguments or their counsel from? So their worldview or paradigm. So this leads us into something that George Watson did, which was a little different. So this is why I'm bringing this up. So and these are names that we recognize from somewhere that we've learned or heard about. Freud. What did Freud mention? Unconscious conflicts stemming from repressed sexual drives that originated in childhood. Jung did not believe all neuroses could be traced to a single origin. There's probably at least 3. So that was Jung. I'm just giving a brief, I know there's more to it. I'm just giving a brief overview. Adler looks for unconscious thoughts or conflicts involving feelings of inferiority together with desires for greater success and achievement. Fromm sees neurotic symptoms as evidence as a desire to escape. Otto Rank dismisses your past. The past doesn't matter. All that matters is right now, and concentrate on present emotional relationships to see what is upsetting you. Now, when I mention like something like a neurotic behavior, that could be some nervousness or anxiousness that's uncontrollable. That could be depression, suicidal thoughts or tendencies. It could be phobias, fears of virtually anything or fears of a lot of different things. So these could be examples of what I'm talking about here. So a lot of these great minds, and they were, to some extent, they were great minds. I think they were deceived minds to some extent too. But along comes a man, I've mentioned him, I believe already, to some extent, or maybe I didn't, but along comes a man, and he's also a psychiatrist, a scientist, a professor. His name is George Watson. He wrote a groundbreaking book in the early 1970s. And here's a picture of him right here. Okay, that's George Watson right there. You probably can see that pretty well, I think. And his book is Nutrition and Your Mind. Now, what I described to you over here was the psychotherapy or psychoanalysis. That's how it would be described by Freud or Jung or someone like that, or their predecessors into our modern day. They would say the psychoanalytic or the psychoanalysis. This is we're going to psychoanalyze. George Watson says, he doesn't say that all of these guys are rubbish. He says that some of their beliefs and what they did was rubbish, but not all of it. Counseling is still a good thing. Listening to someone is still helpful. But George Watson says, I will do something different. And how this led up to this if we did a whole thing if we did episodes on George Watson, we might have 10 episodes on Prove All Things on George Watson. But George Watson does the psychochemical response. He tries to ask the probing questions that leads to a specific, definite answer for his patients. He doesn't just say, oh, you have repressed homosexual tendencies. That's what's going on with you because your father did or said this. That's why you're like this. He doesn't do that. He says, no, that's too simple. It doesn't make sense. Because of grotesque contradictions he saw with many of his previous psychiatric minds of the past and present, because of that, he said, I've got to do something better because the patients aren't being helped the way they can or should be. The psychochemical responses, as you very well could have guessed it, it's about nutrition, but also how lifestyle and even drugs, prescription drugs, legal drugs can affect our well-being and health. I'll try to go through an example. I know we have limited time right now. I'll try to go through an example of this for you. And I highlighted some notes. This gets incredibly fascinating, and I'm just scratching the surface. I promise you, I'm just scratching the surface right now on this. George Watson, in one example, he dealt with he had a friend. His friend was his friend and his wife. The friend's wife and the husband and wife were having some trouble. They had a good marriage, good marriage to a certain point. They go on a vacation to the Caribbean, and their problems began on vacation. You'd think on vacation, things are gonna be better on vacation, right? For this couple, they did not. They got worse. And they got worse when they came out of vacation too. And they continued to get worse. And then one day, the wife has a party for her husband, a birthday party. And she's anxious about it. And this is what I'm giving you as an overview of George Watson's study in dealing with this couple. That's what I'm giving you right now. So because he asked many questions and he asked a lot of probing questions that really got to the root of the matter. But so the wife prepares a party for the husband, and it's a birthday party, and the husband, he's tired. It's the end of the day. His wife says, have another drink or have this cupcake or something along those lines. Husband says, no, honey, I'm done. Thank you. It's been great. And the wife gets upset, very upset, much more. And she got upset to a point that didn't make sense. The husband has a golf trophy. She gets his golf trophy, smashes it through the window and says, I did all this for you. You don't love me. Happy birthday. I'm leaving. She gets in her car, drives away, and the guy's beside himself. And she comes back home eventually, and he's asking her, honey, what's wrong? What happened? And she's unable to really verbalize her emotions, and she doesn't understand even the whole situation that transpired just a little time ago. What is going on here? What is happening? Are there some kind of suppressed emotional baggage from the past that just blew over all of a sudden? George Watson says no. Doesn't mean our past doesn't affect us. As I said, George Watson would say some of this is rubbish, but not all of it. So here's what happened. They were on this vacation. They started taking sulfa drugs. Sulfa drugs, you may or may not be familiar with them, or you very well could be. Sulfa drugs are drugs that they kill bacteria. They started taking these drugs because they felt like we're going to have water. It's in the Caribbean, the tropics, and we just don't know if we're going to get food poisoning or get sick or something. Let's take these sulfa drugs so it'll help us from not getting sick or ill or something like that. So they start doing that. The wife's personality begins to change. The husband's does not. Interesting, eh? Maybe not so much. Remember, biochemical individuality. Roger Williams. I shared that book with you a little bit ago. So just keep that in mind. So also, they come out of vacation, and the wife continues to take the drugs because she thinks, okay, I better keep taking this because just in case I ate something or drank something that doesn't agree with me, I'm going to keep taking this drug. So the husband stops taking it. The wife continues to take it. What should we know about these sulfa drugs? Let's take a look. We have that gut flora, the good and bad bacteria. We need a balance between them. Here's what the sulfa drug does. And if you wanted some names, some examples would be gantracin, Bactrim, sulfadiazine, azolfidine, and zonagrin. Just in case anyone is listening and are interested to know more or want some names. So what happens here with these? We have the gut flora, good and bad bacteria. Yes, the sulfa drugs kill bad bacteria. They help in that regard. But guess what else they do? They kill the good bacteria. Why is that significant? This good bacteria of the gut flora, it helps synthesize a couple of the B vitamins, riboflavin and biotin to be exact, also vitamin K. These nutrients are key for energy production in tissues and also the central nervous system. Now, what happens if we have too much as an individual? Too much of these sulfa drugs for our systems. Guess what happens? We have depression, anxiety, social withdrawal, irritability, excitability, a tendency to lose self-control. Part of what was happening was this. Her blood sugar level got very low. And when she came back, not only was she taking the drug continuously, she also went on a low-carb diet, which she wasn't getting the nutrients for her tissues because she was losing the ability of the two key B vitamins, which help for energy metabolism, and vitamin K helps in this regard too. But also, she went on a low-carb diet, so she's shutting off carbohydrates, which which carbohydrate creates glucose, a sugar, which is the key fuel source for the brain. And it disrupts cognitive function. It disrupts it.
Right.
Now, you might say, well, George, that's one really weird example. I got it. I get it. But here's the thing, folks. Here's the thing. Different individuals. We're all a little bit different. He also mentions that this was, she was a woman slight of build, or maybe like a little thinner. She gained a few pounds. Maybe she wasn't that heavy, but she thought she was heavy. So she gets on that low carb diet. Her blood sugar level is low. That affects the brain. And then her ability to metabolize nutrients, transfer these foods to energy was disrupted. So like a double whammy for her. Eventually what happened was she stopped losing self-control. She was placed on a yogurt probiotic liquid formula, which helped her tremendously. The probiotic, along with some soda crackers, some crackers. The crackers aren't the most nutritious, but what the crackers do is they create like a base or binding for the gut wall. So the good probiotics have a place to start to rebuild and grow again, or the good gut flora, or the good bacteria, in essence. So that's why the crackers were an important part. But also she had to change her low carb diet because it also affected her brain health. Very interesting, eh? And it may well, as George Watson writes about it, it may well have saved their marriage. So we got to consider that the individuality of people. I'm not saying that all drugs are bad, and because if we're on a prescription drug, we need to stay on it with doctor supervision, of course. But make note of that. Different individuals respond differently, and God, we're not these supernatural beings. We're these, God made us human. We're these living souls, and everything here happens. It's biochemistry, a chemical reaction. Always remember too, just to add an additional note, everything happens in water. Water is always number one. The cleaner, the purer, the better. Everything happens with water. Water lubricates our joints. Water's Alzheimer's patients, a lot of them are dehydrated. Guess where? In the brain. In the brain. Dehydration.
Yeah, I'm not discounting what you're saying. I would agree that definitely when we're hungry, when we haven't eaten all day and then we feel a little stress from someone, it can lead us to blow up much quicker than if we had eaten something. So I totally get what you're saying there, George, about the nutrition and how it relates to the body chemistry. But I would not say that, well, I don't think Watson said this, but all those men who had those different theories on psychiatry, I think there's some validity to all of that to some degree. I'm not saying that they knew the panacea, they had it all figured out, but I think that stress also comes from experiences we have. PTSD would be an example. You know, these things can affect our body chemistry also. Psychological experiences can affect that body chemistry too. So I hear what you're saying. I'm not going to discount, though, some of the psychological experiences that people have. And when you mention homosexuality as another possibility there of the differences within people, you know, why this small part of the population goes in this direction, there are a number of reasons why, just like why people become alcoholics. There are a couple reasons why, a number of reasons there also, and there are predispositions for this because of the body chemistry. So you're opening up a whole other avenue we can go down in a future show. I just wanted to throw that in here towards the end, but let me go to Jeff as we start to wind down here.
Yeah, definitely very, very interesting concepts today, and you know, things to think about as far as, you know, what we eat and I guess what it comes down to is we have to figure out what's best for each of us, you know, I guess, and using God's guidelines as a way to make sure we're staying within the correct boundaries of what we eat and the things that we do. Is what I'm getting from this. Is do you have any other thoughts you want to give to us, or anything to say before we finish this up?
I will add this to Mike. Going back to Mike's point, George Watson does say in here that he doesn't totally discount counseling, the ideas of other psychiatrists. he does say it has its place. He does say that in the book. What he does say, though, is that he became concerned because he was finding there was tremendous contradictions in that some patients that he observed were going to one psychiatrist, getting this idea or this thought process or worldview from the one psychiatrist, getting something totally different from someone else. For that reason, George Watson said, hey, we've got to look into this more deeply. But again, Mike, you are correct. And George Watson does say, in all fairness, he does say that he doesn't say that I can't use any information from anybody else, but let's see if we can go dig even deeper and find out more what's going on too as well. Because there's certainly there's things that can affect us from the past. I do believe that as well. I do think though that we are accountable and we can overcome. And certainly Philippians 4:13, we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. But yes, Mike, even George Watson does say in the book here that he doesn't just throw everything out as garbage. He does say, let's use what works because this can be helpful. Because sitting down to talk to someone, yes, you're right. It's helpful. Just sitting and listening to some people may be the most helpful thing we can do sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Watson that some of the ideas of the psychiatrist are also a little bit off too. There's some good and some bad in there. Like Freud. Yeah. Freud thought everything was related to sex in a child's mind. You know, that's not true.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess the idea there's about how drugs can affect your behavior and different things.
Yeah.
And I guess it's maybe food as well. And I guess everything affects us to a degree, but are we still responsible for that behavior? Even though we have these outside things that we have influences and stuff. I remember now it's been over 20 years where I had chemotherapy for cancer, and I tell you what, there was times after I had that chemotherapy, you wouldn't want to be around me because I was grumpy and just angry and just all kinds of these like crazy emotions I would have after having those chemicals in you.
Right.
And I was like, this is not me. I don't know why I just said that to someone, but I just did. And I can you kind of know what's happening, but somehow that chemistry can affect your behavior more than we realize.
It's been a pleasure.
This gets back at what you're saying, Jeff and George, is God has created variety because what he wants us to have, but for the grace of God, I might have had these hormonal imbalances. I might have had things affecting me, and to not judge people, we need each other and help each other.
Yeah, you know what? Because again, I could have had something that affected me that made me think, well, you know what? I think I feel like a woman, and I need to become a woman. I need to do all I can to become a woman. And you think that's funny, but that could have been me. That could have been you that had that whatever circumstance happen or whatever that caused that. And so we have to understand that people who are dealing with this, they're dealing with something that's serious, and they need really good help if they're going to overcome. These things that they deal with.
Just came across a good article about that. A young lady from Northern California. She was more of a tomboy type. This was in Epic Times, I think in the Mind and Body, or one of the sections. But she told her parents, I think I should be a boy. Her parents didn't know how to take this, but her educational surrounding environment help her promote this and lead her in this direction, as well as some doctors that she knew. And she had her breasts removed. Then she decided, I don't want this. I was just confused. I don't know what I want. So, so basically, Jeff, there's a lot of things going on with a lot of people inwardly, and they have confusion. They don't know, and they just need the right guidance. And now she regrets. She says, I want to be a girl. I want to be a woman. I just didn't have the right mentorship as I was going through this uncertainty or this confusion that I had. Why she had it, I don't know. I'm still studying the article a little bit more to kind of figure that out if I can. But now she regrets it, and she said her educators and her doctors basically she feels now they turned their back against her because they really didn't help her. All they did was promote what she was saying and what she felt, but didn't really try to get the root cause of her internal feelings. So it's a powerful and sad thing, but she's doing better now, and she's a lovely young lady.
Yeah, with this particular issue, we don't have good leadership in the medical community, in the political community, in any community. We have terrible leadership, telling people things that are bad for them, and it's unfortunate that we see a rise in this because there's a lack of leadership in all these different fields as far as confronting a real problem that people have, but not giving them the right tools and things they need to deal with it and overcome it, as they can, as we all have to overcome things.
Yeah.
All right. So I was losing Mike for a little bit, but Mike's back now. So any final thoughts, George, before we go?
Just a thank you. I hope it was beneficial to both of you and maybe others who are listening, interesting and beneficial in some way, shape, or form. Additionally, I have a component of this presentation on the lymphatic system, which deals more with movement and exercise. Mm-hmm. I've had a little bit more to share here, but not a whole lot more. But lymphatic system, looking at that, I think would be a nice subject maybe down the line at some point if you'd like.
Oh, we'll definitely have you back.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us.
Get you on later this year.
Okay. My pleasure.
All right. We'll say goodbye to everybody, and we'll see everybody next week for another edition of Prove All Things.
Did we put people have questions?
I don't think my email's not on, I don't think.
I can give your email. What is your email? I can type it in.
Okay.
Jeff, were you able to beam up in case people have questions?
Yeah, that's what we're doing. Okay. What's your email, George?
It is GEOR GIEV as in Victor 22 forever FOREVER @gmail.com. This is my main email now. So Georgiev22forever@gmail.com.
Let me see if this is correct here. Sure. Georgiev. Is that correct right there? Georgiev22forever@gmail.com.
That is correct. Yes.
All right. So if you need to contact or have any questions, feel free to reach out to George and he will respond to you. Again, thank you again for joining us. Very interesting topic, and we definitely have a lot more we can get into. So we'll see everybody again next week on another Prove All Things.
It's been a pleasure, guys. Thanks. Take care.
George.
Peace. My pleasure.